Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the February 6, 2024 meeting of the Orange Town Plan and Zoning Commission. I am Commissioner Ozzie Parenti.
Tom Tarenti.
Paul Kaplan.
Kevin Cornell.
Judy Smith.
Jack DeMerchant, zoning administrator.
Okay, we also have seated at the table this evening Glenn Chalder, planning consultant, and he's here to talk to us tonight about the plan of conservation and development that we will, by statute, be revising at least, or redoing to some extent in the coming months. So we'll get to Glenn in a minute, but let's first take a look at the minutes from the January 2nd meeting. I wasn't here for this meeting, so I don't have any comments other than the reference to a minor medical procedure. It may have been minor to everybody else.
You
Wasn't
know,
so-
the HIPAA rules.
Yeah.
I was trying to be discreet.
But I'm okay now.
Back with a vengeance.
Deb, the last line of page 1, just the spelling of Glenn's last name.
Yeah, I see that one.
Figured I'd make points with the early line.
Everybody all set?
Yes.
All right, somebody prepared to make a motion to approve the minutes?
Move that we approve the minutes dated January 2nd, 2024 as amended.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
It's been seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
And I abstain. Okay. Next item on our agenda is old business. Anybody want to have anything they want to bring up under that topic?
I've had some discussions with some residents, but with regard to the, what's the cannabis facility
The
called?
dispensary?
Dispensary.
Yeah, Rise dispensary.
I haven't seen, I've gone by there obviously a number of times. I have not seen any issues or problems or anything like that. You heard anything?
I've gotten one or two, this is maybe a month ago, not in the recent weeks, from some of the neighbors who appeared at those public hearings. Some minor stuff with, flow of traffic. I think I had one person reach out and say someone did try to take a right onto Lindy when we have the left-only sign there. Obviously, really no way to police that. But I've had, a similar opinion. Every time I drive by, they do have a parking attendant out there. I have not seen the parking lot filled up to the point where they have been forced to use that reciprocal parking at Hitchcock Plaza. I'm sure they have used it, but, since with my observations, I have not seen any, major issues or anything like that, and seems to be operating as designed.
Have
That's
they
good to hear.
received their recreational license yet?
To the best of my knowledge, yes, that
Okay.
they have.
Well, that would be the test.
Yeah, I mean, that was exactly what I was.
Yeah, they-
So they haven't, you think they have their license, but they haven't started yet, recreation?
No, I think that they have. The
Oh, yeah.
only, they told me when they were opening that they wouldn't have their recreational license for about a month. They've been open for several months now. But I could reach out and confirm. I think it was an easy transition and they ended up doing hybrid sales. But I could reach out and confirm. But last I heard, they were only gonna be held up for a month.
How about Firelight?
Firelight, they're going. I know that they've actually started leasing. They've at least released their prices and telling people to apply for housing there. They don't have their COs yet. I know that they're pushing for them to come soon.
What-
These are all rentals?
These are all rentals, yes.
What's left on the CO?
The CO, I think there's minor, building stuff left, some punch list items for the fire department.
Landscaping kind of?
Yeah, site work pretty much, completed. I haven't done my final, walkthrough or checks. They haven't requested their bond back. But the,
Prices are definitely out, because I've had a couple of residents say it's when is it going to be open?
yeah,
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Yep. So people are definitely interested in site work wise, substantially complete, based on my observations. I think they're just doing some punch list items for fire and building.
They won't try to lease the commercial
That's a good question. I mean, they
until
have to
the
get,
residential?
I
or-
think, I don't know if they're waiting on one or the other. I think the commercial might take a little bit of time because the leases, and they might have to do fit outs for the commercial spaces depending on the users that come in. So I think they want their CO, if they already know who these commercial entities are gonna be, they have not shared that with me. But I think that they're gonna have to know who the users are before they completely fit everything out in there. So they're looking to get their CO, I think, for the whole building.
And what about the medical building on,
That's moving right along.
okay.
Yeah, actually, obviously not in front of us tonight, but they did just submit, or the applicant for that parcel.
33 or whatever that is over there?
That
What's
is, it was the old trailer. It was-
Trailer park.
Yeah,
Yeah.
trailer park, yeah, it's Racebrook
Orthopedic?
Medical Center, yeah. They just submitted a text amendment application regarding signage in town. They wanna have a sign that, it's not really that, insane or crazy. We have other signs like it here in town. But by our current language, it doesn't fit our display regulations, so they will be coming in front of us for.
Neon?
It's not neon, yeah, no, it's like I said,
use
it's,
the firelight sign.
it's part of the, where the
Yeah,
display
they're
can
gonna
be.
take it back.
Right, so, yeah, so we will have that in front of us, but that's also moving along steadily, so we should be in good shape.
Good. Am I missing any other projects or?
I'm trying to think, we have ABF Freight on Carlson, they're moving along as
Right.
well. And
That was an addition though, right? Was that
it was a
They were
property
moving from one
change.
building to another.
Right,
Yeah.
right, and they were adding on to the building, but they left their one property, moved to the one next door, and that's going well as well. Other than that, I think, that was it for the.
That takes care of
major
your
ones, yeah.
report as well.
I think so, yes.
All right. All right, anything else under old business? Okay. New business, well, why don't we go to report of the zoning enforcement officer
Yeah,
first?
you guys just got it.
We just
That's
did
That's
it.
about
That was
it.
it.
Yeah.
All right, very good. Under new business, we have reference to the Plan of Conservation and Development revision discussion with Glenn Chalder. First of all, well, let me ask, is there anything else under new business anybody wants to bring up? Okay, then we can begin our discussion with Glenn. Where do we begin?
I think, if Glenn maybe wants to address us and, let us know his experience on these newer POCD revisions. I know it's been 10 years since we've done one here. And if anyone has any questions or anything like that, I say we use his expertise while he's here. I know I have a couple things written down, but that's mainly because I haven't been through this, before. So, I think we'll let him take the floor and.
Yeah, I don't remember seeing our actual proposal. It may be because I just don't remember it. But I don't, I don't remember drafting the actual proposal.
The RFP, I'm sure
request,
Paul
yeah.
did.
Yeah.
I'm sure Paul
Paulie did it?
Yeah,
Okay.
and I'm sure he used other RFPs to kind of formulate ours. But I gave everyone a copy of the one that we used last time. If they're still comfortable with the language, if there's stuff that they think we should emphasize more, and, it's changed over 10 years, but I think that's a good place to start.
Have you saw this, you just,
Jack was nice enough to share with me the new Fairfield one, Southington, and there was one other one, I think Simsbury.
no, but.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So I saw those three. They're much different in tone from each other.
Right.
One was much more micromanaging, one was much more bare bones, and then there was Southington was someplace in between.
Okay.
But anyhow, I didn't see the one from Orange.
Yeah, I just found the one from Orange today,
Yeah.
actually, so I made sure I got hard copies, but Glenn was nice enough to send over some examples, so
Good.
we'll go from there.
All right.
Can't tell you how excited I am to be here, actually. It's hard,
Bar the door.
don't let me out.
Thrilling group.
It's hard to believe that really it's been probably 8 years, 8.5, since we adopted the plan. And as you pointed out earlier in the meeting, we started the RFP process in 2013. So time flies, I think, for a lot of different reasons, and a lot has happened in that time frame. So when Jack called and asked me about the process, et cetera, I was happy to share some information and also to be here with you to answer any questions you may have as you embark on this process. For you, it's sort of like something that you might undertake once every 10 years. But for me, it's something I work with a number of municipalities on, and actually those three towns that I gave you the RFPs on are towns I actually did, are finishing up in New Fairfield, but did the POCDs in. And so I think I wanted to give you that specificity, et cetera, to give you a chance to start asking questions about, you know, what's the best type of RFP? Should it be micromanaging and specific, or should it be?
I note that you said you were finishing up in New Fairfield.
Correct.
And New Fairfield was the one that was very specific, at least from the three that I looked at. Is that what you typically would see?
Not really. I'm not a big fan of a specific scope of work. In a sense, it's like you going to see your doctor and you're telling him what
What to
tests
do,
he's gonna
right.
run.
That's what I felt
And the
like.
issue is, you know, you have consultants with different expertise. And let me just start off and say, I would always advise that as part of your RFP process, I would urge you to contact references on whoever you've interviewed and you're considering hiring. I think it's the most important thing that you can do. And I think the question to ask is, if you're going to do it all over again, would you hire the same firm? And I think that that really is the telling thing in terms of, because people will come to you as part of the interview process and tell you what a great job they are, the people that they have, their education background, et cetera. The issue is you got to talk to their clients and figure out whether or not the people that you're considering are going to meet your needs in terms of, you know, what's going on in Orange today and what's anticipated over the next 10 years. So I put together, like you guys need more paper, right? But actually what this is the, just send that down that way, and I'll send, I should keep one. You should keep one, sorry. I think there's 10 total, so there should be plenty here for the table and some extras for Jack, et cetera. This is actually an update of the proposal I put together for the last POCD. And I'll tell you that I don't think the scope of work, in terms of the way I think the planning process should unfold, has changed much over the last 10 years. Just like, again, when you go to see a doctor, the MRI doesn't change, the blood tests don't change, all that other stuff. So I think that I wanted to sort of give you a chance to see a scope of work, because it's certainly been more than 10 years since you saw this, and then to talk about the elements of the scope, the major phases of the scope, the kind of schedule and other things like that. So if it's all right with you guys, what I'll do is sort of launch into how I think the process can work best. Interrupt me at any time. I don't want it to be a lecture, I want it to be a conversation. And then at the end, whatever questions and stuff you may have, we'll just
Great,
keep
perfect.
talking.
Very good.
I think the POCD process works best when it breaks up into sort of three main phases. And the first phase is to understand and share and discuss what we think the issues are in the community. So as part of my work, what I typically want to do is interview the commission, interview staff people, do a questionnaire of other boards and commissions. And you may recall last time we did a public meeting at the community center. Nowadays, communities, because of COVID, started doing online surveys, and those are also fine.
What's your experience level with the feedback? Is it as much as when you get together on a in-person basis?
It's getting harder and harder to get people to come to a meeting on a planning topic.
So this would be it's migrating toward online.
It is, and so again, in New Fairfield, we did a survey, I think we ended up with over 600 responses, I think. in
New
Sims-
Fairfield, wow, that's pretty good.
And over, Simsbury over 1,000. So I think the whole idea is that you leave the survey open for 4 to 6 weeks. And then in New Fairfield, we put signs out, lawn signs. I know that, don't shoot me, Jack, in terms of, you know, the issues with signs, but the idea was that people are busy, they got a lot of stuff going on in their lives, and they keep thinking, well, I'm gonna do that, but then they don't get to it. So the signs would change every week or every 2 weeks. And we'd say to people, you know, survey's closing on, I think it was September 15th, so get that in. And people, you can see from the survey results, the date and the time that people submitted. I mean, you can't figure out who it is, but just No.
Deadline at the end.
But 2 o'clock in the morning, people
Yeah.
are filling out the survey, or clearly, they're on their phones or whatever. And so I think they don't have to be there at the community center at the time you pick.
Right.
They'll give input at the time that they pick. And I think the results can really be very insightful in terms of what people care about. We, in planning and zoning, think that we know what makes a good community, but other people are saying, look, I just want to have a dispensary nearby. Okay, that's the number one thing that you care about, then let us know. So I think through the initial process, I would encourage trying to cast a wide net to get as much input as possible to set the table for the issues that people care about as part of the plan. And in the meantime, there's other work going on for the POCD in terms of background demographic information, looking at the economic information, how the community has changed over the last 10 years, population-wise, et cetera. Older, yeah. You're not alone in that.
How was our response from the public the last time we did this? I mean,
I'm trying to remember, the public meeting at the community center, I might say, we had 50 or 60 people would be my guess.
so that would have been the entirety of our
For the scoping meeting up front, okay? So the scoping meeting, you may recall, the meeting that I like to run, just to kind of give you a quick overview, you would walk into the room, you got an envelope, we asked you to go to one map, put a blue dot where you
Right.
live.
Yeah.
The next map was things you're proud of in orange. and
Yeah.
We gave you up to 4 dots to identify the things in town you really cared about. I think the maps, I'm pretty sure they're in there.
New Fair's about the same population as we do.
Okay. Yeah, so, the next, so Prouds, then the next map is Saris.
right.
And then the other exercise is called planning points. You had 50 planning points in an envelope, 22 10s and 2 5s, and we had boxes which were topics generally included or considered as part of the plan. And we asked you to put your planning points in the boxes based on what you felt was most important to you or most important to the community.
Right.
And then we summarized what those were. And
So
I'm sorry.
beside that, did we have we had a public hearing to approve?
correct.
Oh,
And
okay. We
then,
had a bunch
again, I'm an advocate, and I'm sure we did it, as we were moving towards finalizing the plan and the public hearing on adoption, I would encourage having a public informational meeting, which is, we're just looking for your feedback. Did we hear you correctly? Are you comfortable with the directions the plan is going? There are things in here you don't like, tell us now, and we can review it and perhaps correct it. And the big advantage to that meeting is that if people sort of hear that nobody told me we were doing a plan, and now it's a public hearing on adoption, sometimes they come armed for bear. And they're looking to pick a fight, and
Yeah.
a plan is not about picking a fight most times. It's really about coming up with
Right.
important, consistent strategic directions for a community.
That's sort of what I was getting at, because a couple of times on just applications, people didn't show up. There would be an application on an amendment to the regulations. Nobody's here for it. We, we grant the application, adopt the amendment, and then, we hear at the next meeting, that's crazy, and so.
It's harder and harder these days, honestly, and the challenge is with more means of communication we ever had before. We have things, Facebook and Twitter, X, whatever we want to call it, all sorts of ways to communicate with people. People are actually less engaged in terms of what's going on in their community. So it takes effort to overcome that, and that's actually why I've had some success with the lawn signs. And they're not big, but they say things like, plan like your kids will live here. Because it causes people to stop for a second. It's not, asking them, what do you want? But think ahead. Think about, for your kids, what sorts of things could make Orange a better place for them?
Jack, where do we stand on, are those signs okay under our
Oh, yeah.
regulations? They're good? Okay.
But we should, I
no,
mean.
Like
Judy
a
says good.
political sign.
Yeah, it's,
I would
Okay.
Amendment.
think that,
All right, oh, I like that. I didn't
We're
even,
good.
we
I
still have
was-
one.
if someone's selling something, that's really when I come in and say, look,
Okay.
signage. If you're saying, hey, sign up for Amity Girls Soccer.
You can put it on.
Yeah, I'm not
Okay.
taking that out.
It would,
This the scoping issue, or phase.
Yep.
Is this something we would start after retaining someone in that request for proposal, and they would be involved in this as well?
I think that they would be your tour guides for
Okay,
this.
good.
You guys have regulatory and other responsibilities, but you really want the person or the team who's gonna be crafting the plan to be collecting this information and
Absolutely.
taking responsibility for collecting it. Because you're gonna want them to turn that information integrated in the plan so that people can see that the commission listened to what people had to say and factored it into
It
the
would-
strategies.
It would seem that during the scoping session, crafting the questions for consideration would lead to a lot of the conclusions
No.
that come later. So it would seem that you would have to give careful consideration to, so for example.
You mean the open-ended questions rather than kind of guiding them?
Well, I mean, so let's say that I might think that it's important we get input from residents as a, you know, we are a cross-section of residents in the town, but we're, you know, 5 people, about some of the things that are happening at the state level that we've either decided to do or not do. You know, accessory apartments, well, obviously, some of those things have come and gone, but that we think we know, but the town is demographically changing as we age in place.
You noticed it.
You know, and so maybe there are some, so I might think that it's important to find out how they feel about some of these planning considerations that are being generated at different levels of government.
And so the only comment that I would have on that, almost is speaking casually, would be, I think, Kevin, you're gonna have to cool your jets a little bit at the get-go.
Yeah.
And, because I think, again, people need to warm up. You guys are planning all the time, really. Well, not all, but certainly at your meetings and everything else. But for people in the community, they gotta start to wrap their heads around what this is. So I think the initial scoping has to be at, like, let's call it a 30,000-foot level, to set some aspirational goals moving forward, set up some fences, if you will, in terms of what sorts of things we should be moving towards. And then I think as we start to get into the plan issues, then we can get into details and specifics. Some people don't know what an ADU is, so now you got to explain it. And so the time to do that is not a sort of, I don't feel, is the first survey. It's almost too much, and it will drive down the participation. So if you make the first one light and breezy, but get a sense of strategies, big picture strategies, that'll set the stage for what would then come later. And then I think you might decide, you say, look, you know what, the meeting is not really gonna work real well, but maybe we could have a couple of surveys. I would say, sure, that is fine. And I think on the last page of all of this is a potential schedule. In some municipalities, I've done what are called sort of listening sessions. And listening sessions are, we invite boards like Economic Development or other boards and commission, Board of Education, other boards and commissions. We're having a listening session on development topics or conservation topics.
Recreation Department.
There you go.
Yeah.
We want you to come and tell us what's on your mind, and anybody in town, please come and tell us what's on your mind. And so now we actually give people a chance to hear and engage in them in a very specific dialogue. Because, you know, the state, what do they say, no man's property is safe while the legislature's in session? I mean, I think it's been apparent that much has happened over the last few years, and there's gonna be more. So having dialogues about that could be very useful and helpful to the process. So the first phase, again, is sort of get the pulse of the community, do some background research and investigation, so the kind of the table is set. The next major part of the planning process I've called thematic evaluation and strategy formulation. So I think we call it a plan of conservation and development, and I think the topics that really kind of filter out and affect the plan is sort of conservation things. These are things we might want to protect in the community, right? And what are those things? The development element of the plan is how do we want to guide growth or change that's going to happen in the future? What sort of fences or boundaries do we want to put up? The third part is infrastructure. That's things like community facilities. Is town hall going to meet our needs? To fire, have, we need any fire station improvements, police, education? Do we have the schools we need? Park and rec, do we have all the fields that we're going to need, et cetera? Transportation, is our road system working? What do we want to do about pedestrians, bicycles? And then infrastructure, utilities, water, sewer, et cetera. But do we have what we need to support the type of town we want to be? And there's some towns that don't. They're struggling. They can't get what they want because they don't have really the infrastructure in place. And for example, New Fairfield, they have a town center, but it's really kind of suffered with COVID. People generally go to Danbury to shop because there's all sorts of shopping opportunities there. But in the meantime, their downtown is quiet. But part of the reason is that the septic systems are about 30, 40 years old. They weren't well built. They don't have a sewer system. And they're starting to fail. So people, a brewery wanted to come along and open, and the issue was they didn't have adequate water supply. Bale Shop wanted to come along, and the sewer capacity wasn't there for them. And so they're deciding now what to do about that, and it's not an inexpensive item. So Orange had the foresight to cut a deal, I think it was Milford or West Haven? West Haven, yeah. And so that creates now the framework. The infrastructure here now is available to support what we want to do, and other communities don't have that. So it's important. And then the other thing over here that I just wanted to point out is that in the current POCD, we kind of had sustainability in as a chapter, because it was kind of something 10 years ago that there was debates about climate change and the other stuff. And it's really changed quite a bit over the last 10 years. And now with what people are seeing in terms of weather events, storm drainage and other things like that, the communities really are starting to take a more proactive role on things like this. So what does that mean for Orange? What does sustainable Orange, what is it? And so I threw it at sort of the top of the list here because I think it's probably a key question. It's not about, being green or we're going to put green roofs on buildings. No, it's really a bigger picture issue in terms of economic sustainability, social sustainability, ecological sustainability. And how does that factor into the plan as a whole? So I think those are sort of the topics which I think would be discussed as part of the POCD. And again, I think generally what the practice was, what we did last time is we prepared booklets for discussion purposes. You guys would read them before the meeting, we'd get together, and we talk about them, say, what are we gonna do on this? Or what's our strategy gonna be? And refined it as we went. And as we got towards the end of the process, we had the formulation of a POCD for us. And then I think after that work is done, the last major section is plan preparation, review, and adoption. So it involves working with the commission, involving the community, other boards and commissions to get their input, et cetera, and then coming together with a strategic view for the future.
So this sequence methodology is very similar to developing, a building on a site, where you
Program it
gather
out.
you go- Right.
Yeah.
Then schematics, conceptual, final plan type of situation. Do you usually see proposals going up? So in those instances, because sometimes you don't actually know how much time someone's gonna have to devote to any particular thing, we often set up contracts that are like, these phases each have a budget to them that are like a bill against not to exceed number type of thing, so that you only have to go to the money people once, and then you kind of draw down on it, so to speak. How do you see these things financially being structured usually, or is that?
So I used to be a municipal employee. That was sort of my first planning role. And I realized the challenges of municipal budgeting. And so I've built my practice around the fact that I pretty much know how much time a POCD is going to take. I don't exactly know where the hours are gonna go, because every town's different. But my business model historically has been with a lump sum.
Okay.
Just, that's what I do. I say, look,
But I don't think we had to go back to the Board of Finance. I'm pretty sure we didn't.
I don't recall doing that. I mean,
Right.
when we agree to a number, that's,
That was
that's
it,
what
right.
it's gonna
That
be.
was one ask, I believe.
That's,
Yeah.
that was what was in the budget.
Okay.
And so that's one of the things I think you guys should start to think about. The last page is sort of a preliminary schedule. My experience over the years has been, it's generally about 12 months to a draft plan, 18 months to adoption. But I realize that you guys, your plan expires in May of '25. And so what that means, expires is not-
Yeah.
too harsh a word.
Stale.
Yeah, ouch, yeah, right. If you guys are still here then. No, but this situation is the state adopted a rule that said that in a scenario where a plan is more than 10 years old, you become ineligible for state discretionary grants. Except that you can ask for permission to get an extension. And generally speaking, they grant them kind of like Halloween candy in a sense. But they do pay attention to the fact that you're working on it. So the issue is, listen, we may have gotten a little bit of a late start, but we have a consultant on board. Our schedule right now is to be adopted blank. It's really not a problem. And you would not be ineligible for state discretionary grants.
But we wouldn't do that ask until later on in the process to see where we're landing.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
And so what I put together here and thought about was that, I'm not sure what your budgeting situation is, but
What-
very often
what
the
is it?
funds don't become available, for example, in a new budget till July 1. That, my thoughts for you guys to be as efficient as possible in the schedule would be to get the RFP together, so Jack's already on top of that one, moving ahead. Start the RFP process in April or May, so that the interviews come and then your selection can be made, so come July 1.
And how fast is that typically done? You know, from when we post the RFP to getting responses and kind of finalizing a deal?
I would say you want to give a consultant probably 4 weeks. I mean, they've done this before. Sometimes consultants have enough work booked that they're not looking around for, another job or submitting another proposal. The challenge with being a consultant is sort of you end up in a feast or famine situation. You put out a proposal and maybe put out 2 or 3 thinking, boy, it'd be great if I got one of those, and then suddenly get 2 or 3 and it's like, oh, now what am I gonna do? So it wouldn't hurt, for Jack, who participates in professional activities, to nurture other people. Have other people come and talk to you between now and the RFP process. But to try to get people primed up for the fact that our RFP is coming out. And I think July and August are not really great times for meetings and public
Right.
meetings. So I said, get the process rolling, but the first survey and public meeting wouldn't really happen until September of '24.
Okay.
And then flow after that.
So let's say, for purposes of discussion, that we like this format. And that, in general, we would like to update this with some things that are pretty mechanical, as you say, the demographics and what have you, and some things requiring public input. Is that something that Jack should be mentioning in the RFP, or are you basically, whoever you get, you're getting their format?
Isn't that sort of telling the doctor what tests you want, or?
Kind of it is. Some people prepare plans, and it's, the themes are live, work, play. And I used to work as town planning and commission support and all the other stuff. And the number of times the commission, you got a zone change or a regulation change, you need to find something in the P O C D to support it. And the issue is, gosh, how do I find that? Where is that? So I found over the years that I think this format works well for the communities that I work in. They seem to favor it, but that doesn't mean there's not a better way, right? That's what kind of innovation is all about. So I think that,
We always
I don't
manage to
think-
come up with something.
I don't think you want to be too prescriptive, but, I mean, if, for the ease of your work, if you were to work, as Kevin says, around the concept of, we think this organization has served us well. So what we'd like to do is work with the chosen consultant on strategic updates of these chapters, all right? So don't give us a whole new kind of format or organization. We want to be able to look at economic development. This is what we said before. This is what we're saying. You're saying we should be doing this now because, you know, the internet age has changed things around, and so therefore,
Right.
that kind of thing.
In the Simsbury proposal, they refer to it as minor category-specific revisions.
So Simsbury is a little bit different. Simsbury basically came to me and said, listen, you did our plan. They did a 5-year update. So I did the 2007 to 2017 in Simsbury, and they said, listen, with all of the changes that happened with COVID and everything else, we just want to revisit where we're at and move ahead. And so that's why I got
Yeah,
that
right.
much specific in terms of, you know, they wanted a new PA 490 strategy, which isn't such a huge deal, but the actual mechanics of that, EDC, you know, evaluating each of the little villages in Simsbury type of stuff in terms they wanted to do. So for me to be able to price something like that, I'd done the prior plan, so we went through the chapters and said, okay, well, yeah, this is, as you, I think, said, technical, right? Or just update the demographics and the other stuff. But then some of these other ones, it's much more policy-oriented, and housing, you know, has gotten to be such a big deal, that consumed a lot more energy than we thought, in terms of the POCD, et cetera. So you could move in that direction if you wanted to, or be a little bit sort of more creative.
Or at a minimum, with responses to the RFP, perhaps they should submit a current plan of conservation and development they put out for someone else, so we could see how they organize their thoughts, and see if that's a methodology
Right.
we can follow when we need to.
Well, that goes back to
Find
whether or not
specific
the
things.
planner is, the consultant is feeling the, what's coming from the town,
Right.
or is the town dictating to the planner what he should be or she should be looking at.
I like Kevin's idea. I think if you said as part of your proposal, I mean, you don't have to print them out. Give us 3 PDFs of plans you've worked on in the last 5, or that have been adopted in the last 5 years. Because first of all, like tells you the towns to call, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's interesting.
But also for you to look at it, and it's almost like trying on a, you know, a new set of clothes or whatever. Does it fit or not fit? Does it feel good? Does it feel right? Or does it kind of feel forced?
It would be easier for us to continue to use essentially what we have.
Right.
I think we've kind of had the
I mean,
talk,
We look at it all the time.
we've had the talk of scope.
Revised, of
Right.
course.
Yeah.
Right, if
Right.
we feel as though our current format is conducive, we think it's easy to read, easy to digest, then, you know, we might say to, you know, whatever consultant we're considering hiring, that we like our current format, and while, you know, the numbers and the data needs updating, and our responses based on the surveys that they give us might need to be, you know, put in there. If we feel comfortable with our current scope, then that's something we should make clear while we're interviewing these
I
consultants.
almost want to hear the exact opposite. I almost want to hear,
Like a blank slate.
right, saying,
Yeah.
listen, I'd feel better about what you said, because you may be spot on, but I'd feel better about it after we looked at what these people had to say, since they've been doing it for a while, and see how it integrates into what we, you know, have done, maybe.
Yeah, we see what they do, and if we look at their examples and we say, you know what, we like this better, then we
Yeah.
can go that, or, you know, maybe we'll stick with what we got, that very well could be it too.
And I think that's very, I'm sorry. go ahead.
No, I mean, I'm not suggesting that we micromanage the consultants like we're trying to write the
POCD, yeah.
the POCT to, you know, to our liking rather than have it, you know, occur.
I think that's a great question, though, for the interview process, would be, the submittal would be your proposed scope of work, your process, and give us examples of three different kinds of POCDs you've done, all right? Because they're not all the POCDs I've done are like this organization. I do shift them around a little bit, depending on what the client wants. And then as part of the interview, you might pre-prepare some questions and say, look, when Joe Blow comes in, and you tell him beforehand, we're gonna ask you, why do you think this exhibit that you gave us is better than what we've got already? Or why wouldn't we do this rather than that? Be prepared to talk about it. And I think that could be very,
heads up, I think, would be getting better responses.
you're building a relationship. You're gonna be working, the schedule I put together is basically, and pretty much most of my work is predicated on one meeting a month dedicated to the POC day. So I realize the commission has to be doing business, but the issue is, I probably need 2 hours of your time once a month to keep us on track and on schedule and really get good feedback from you. So that's what it's gonna be based on, and I think it's a fair question to ask other consultants, you know, what's your plan? What are you gonna do?
And
And
for
how's
this
that gonna
interview
work?
process, you know, I assume it's not just myself or town staff. I'm assuming members of, the commission is involved. Is it usually the whole commission? Because if it is these interviews, is it done at a meeting setting? Because if we're all in one room, it's a meeting.
Yep.
So we would put, you know, this on an agenda. We would have potential consultants come in, you know, give their spiel. We obviously ask them whatever our questions are. And then, you know, we would convene or, you know, talk about which ones we like best. So it's not during the day, you know, me and, you know, the first selectmen are conducting these interviews.
No,
It's
I
really,
think the commission,
Right,
you
okay.
guys are the ones who are gonna be adopting the plan when it's done. I can't say I've ever been in an interview that's taped and televised.
Yeah.
So I think the issue would be that you just may wanna kinda work that out.
okay. Executive session is just us. I mean, we
Yeah.
could do
No,
a,
but it's gotta be a legal matters, but we can have a meeting not on a Tuesday,
we could have a special
a
meeting.
special meeting.
And then not have it televised.
Yeah, I mean, there's no legal obligation for us to televise. We do it so people can keep up,
informed,
yeah,
yeah.
and, you know, keep themselves
But
informed.
you'd have to notice it.
Oh, yeah, and anyone
Yeah.
could come, it's a public meeting.
Interesting.
I'd say encourage you to do work on that. I've not been at interviews for a POCD or other municipal project. It is a sort of closed-door meeting, and we're gonna hash it out.
But I don't, so, but the public would be in the audience, but it's
They
not
don't
free for the public to
participate.
come in and
It's not a public
participate.
hearing, but
Well-
you're saying they're not even allowed in.
I think the issue is it's a competitive bid process.
Yeah.
You can't have somebody from another firm sitting in on the
Oh,
other, it's
yeah,
bad
okay.
form.
Why don't you just check with Vinnie? I mean,
Yeah.
to me,
Yeah.
it's like hiring a consultant is slightly different than deciding whether someone can have another 60
In
feet
the,
on
No,
their
I
garage.
totally agree, yeah.
In the request for proposals that I was looking at here,
Once they're hired, I think
Right.
the rules change.
I think at that time,
Yeah.
you would want the public to be
To be a
involved in
part
the
of it.
process, but if,
but here they
Sure,
had
Vinnie's got the
the
answers.
point
Yeah.
person soliciting information back and forth. But you're saying for the actual hiring purposes, it would be the whole board. And the question is, how do we how do we do that in, you know?
yeah, I don't remember how the interview went last time. I could probably tell you the date by going back through my
Yeah,
records and stuff.
I mean, call Vinnie.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's simple enough.
Yeah, I mean, if Vinnie says, you get 3 people, you can only have 2 people from the board. And then you just interview them, and we'll just rotate who they are,
Okay,
or whatever he says.
yeah, no, that's totally fine with me. I just want to make sure, obviously, you know, we're
Right.
giving everyone a chance to ask the questions that they
Yeah,
want to ask.
I'd feel a lot more comfortable if it was
The whole
Full
board, right.
commission, I think
Yeah.
it was.
I would too, but let's find out what we
Yeah.
can do.
Absolutely, yeah, and I think it would, you know, we can't have consultants have, you know, and people in the audience listening to that or partaking. I think that makes perfect sense,
Yep.
so. We'll check with Vin and see what he suggests.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be surprised if it had to be open to the public. I mean, what if the Board of Selectmen were interviewing somebody?
Right,
or-
right. Yeah,
That would have to be,
a lot of potential for problems there.
I don't know.
In the RFP, I'm sure I could look it up, but is there a requirement for where it gets posted? I would put it on the town website, I'd send it to OPM, but is there a requirement for where we have to
Not
notice that
really,
for a
no.
certain period of
I
time?
mean, realistically, it's, depending on what, whoever coordinates purchasing in town, they might have normal protocols and procedures, but I think, and I've seen RFPs before, that the town has called me after the fact and said, well, nobody responded to our RFP, and I said, well, what'd you do with it? We published it in the local paper. Well, I'm sorry, it just doesn't work that way anymore. So I think the most effective way to do it, are you on the listserv, Jack? I think you are, the Connecticut APA,
For-
Connecticut APA listserv?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so they post there, and so people, you could post, or somebody else could post for you.
Okay.
On the listserv, just please, Orange is looking for a consultant to help prepare the update to its POCD. The information can be found here, and there's the URL link to your website with the information on it. Connecticut APA also does have a website, and they do have a bids RFP page. The challenge that can come with that is that you get firms nationally who are, trolling those. So, you know, you can get proposals from San Francisco or something.
But what you described is where you would look if you were a planner.
Yeah, I mean, I
Yeah.
think, again, I not a large operation or whatever, but I pay attention to what's going on locally in the listserv. So I've done work out of state, but basically my go-to is
It
Connecticut.
does have to go out to bid.
I think yes. I mean, the last time our contract price, it was $89,000, because that was Planometrics, and we also asked for Fuss and O'Neill for the traffic impact. We wanted to do a little bit more in terms of traffic and traffic calming. We had some cut-through traffic issues, et cetera. So we felt we needed that engineering assistance to do that. So if there aren't that level of engineering questions this time, then you don't have a second consultant, which adds overhead and everything else. And
No, but I mean, you have to send the request for a bid out broadly.
yes, and.
In other words, you couldn't, for example, recommend to us, 3 firms that did this kind of work that you thought, could do a great job on it, and we talked to them. I mean, I'm just trying to.
I think the right scenario would be to go through the process of advertising it in the appropriate places. What's the story, the Emperor's New Clothes or whatever? Somebody's gonna come along who's gonna have a better idea, a better approach, a better way to do it. And if you don't open the process up, you'll never find that person. So, and I could work with Jack to say, Jack, maybe you wanna call, such and such or such and such, and let them know that you're doing this.
Yeah.
That personal phone call.
Well,
you
that's,
know,
I guess what I was sort
Yeah,
of getting
both,
at.
you would do both.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a problem or anything else. I just wanted you, I've heard of your firm. I know that you do POCDs. We're
Yeah.
doing ours, and we would be very interested in receiving a proposal from you guys.
Yeah, that interview process is us putting it out to bid. We've posted it, we're getting potential consultants that we might decide to retain, and based on if we choose one, I would then go to the Board of Finance, who is aware of this, by the way, they know that they're gonna have to allocate money. And we would just get their approval saying that the Planning and Zoning Commission has decided this is who we wanna retain, this is gonna be the price, and then they obviously allocate those funds for us, right?
Yeah.
Figure it out. Every town's a little bit different in terms of the purchasing process. Some towns, it's in the capital budget, and the funds become available as of July 1. Other towns do the appropriation after the consultant has been selected.
Okay.
That adds time. There's not a consultant who's gonna start work without a signed
Right, yeah.
agreement. The town can't sign it without the money,
Yeah,
so.
so you're gonna have to
We'll
talk
check with the Board
to,
of Finance.
Right,
So
the
there-
Board of Finance is aware of this, I haven't,
but that's a specific little twist there. We wanna make sure that the money's available
right.
in July, especially.
John Cifarelli has told me that he does not foresee an issue, we wouldn't be waiting
Good.
for the
Okay.
funds to become active, but I definitely would wanna clarify that with him and make sure we're 100% on the same page.
If I remember correctly, I don't think it was an interview as much as it was a presentation by the people that we're interested in doing the work.
Was
And we ask questions, and
Brian Miller?
Yeah,
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 yeah.
I mean, that's the way it
Exactly
normally
what I'm
goes,
thinking.
Oz. It is, as you described. For example, if I was here tonight, this was an interview, I would come in with boards and handouts and other
Yeah.
stuff and say, you know,
and you've reviewed your plan, and here's what I think of it, and here's.
I'd go through this type of document here and
Right.
say, this is the way I see the process unfolding, and I'd kind of spell out the various steps and then ask if there's any
I
questions.
remember
or
last time, you had the
Yeah.
dancing girls, and there was all kinds of bells and whistles.
I mean,
Yeah. It's coming back to me.
another way is that you can look at the different POCDs in towns in the certain geographic range and see who created them.
OPM has a website too, on the OPM website, that lists all the Connecticut
The
municipalities.
municipalities and
the
when they did, yes,
Yes.
I have seen that Excel
Yeah.
sheet, and that is helpful. So I'll send that over to the
Good.
commission, like Glenn said, it has every municipality, who did the POCD, when it was last revised. You know, I think we could target people who did POCDs in similar communities as ours. You know, I don't know if there's any way for us to like weed out the people that, you know, let's say we get 10 applicants or 10 people that come in, and we say, you know, we know this one person, they've only done work out of state in large cities, we know they're probably not the people for us. I mean, I'm sure we could,
We don't have to interview everybody.
right,
Yeah.
right.
You don't, and I think that's what
You call
normally.
the town planner and you say, how'd your process go?
Mm-hmm.
And are you happy with the result?
Right.
Like he said,
Glenn,
call
check
reference.
I think we have to, but would we not kind of have to wait and come in and let's say we have, you know, 3 people that we're interested in, I would check their references, make sure, you know, let's say they did one in Monroe. You know, I'll call Monroe and, you know, make sure that they were happy or, you know, unhappy, whatever it was. And then we would maybe reconvene and decide based on the feedback that I got.
So, just jump in for a second, Jay. I mean, I think, I think if somebody asked me about another consultant and said, did they do a good job or not do a good job, I'm gonna try to be a little evasive on that question, okay? But if your question is, hey, if your time was up, your 10 years and, you know, you were doing your plan, would you hire the same firm again?
Right.
So it's not a direct question.
Yeah, I didn't. I
No, I'm
wouldn't
just
have-
saying,
Yeah,
but
understood,
the way you
understood.
word it will open up that opportunity to really get the feedback that I think a town would really benefit from.
Invaluable, yeah, understood.
So, you wanna try to get the best feedback. you can.
Absolutely, and I just want to make sure, you know, everyone is involved. I don't want this to be something that, you know, I'm only reaching out, I'm the only one communicating. Obviously, I know you guys are volunteers and this isn't what you do every day, but
We're not getting paid?
every day.
I'm sorry to break that to you.
Well-
But I just want to, I just want to make sure everyone, you know, is aware that this is not, you know, going to be something that we, you know, talk about once every other month. This is, you guys have done this before, but
Right,
this
yeah.
is going to be something we need active involvement in, you know, and, you know, it is something we're going to have to pay attention to for the next year. So as long as we are aware of that and, you know, willing to put in some time, then, you know, I think the process is getting more clear, at least for me, you know, in my head.
And so I think if there's questions, Jay, along the way, don't hesitate to shoot me an email or
Yeah,
give me a
thank you,
call on
Barry.
the
I
phone or
appreciate
whatever.
that.
Just, I'll tell you what I've learned over the years and, you know,
Oh, that'd be
advice or
fantastic.
guidance that might be useful or helpful for you guys.
Sure it will. I'm
Yeah.
sure I'll need it.
So it sounds like you're not going to be doing this any,
So,
Yeah,
I
kinda-
tell people, I told Jack, I'm curating my work, right? Now, what that means
not
is
even
that
close? Oh,
It used to be that, you know, an RFP would show up and I'd say, do I have capacity or not? Yes or no? And then, you know, go for it, not go for it type of stuff. And the hard part with being a consultant is that you don't have a retirement plan like an end date, right? I'm gonna retire on, you know, age this or, you know, years that or whatever. So I'm in the process of cutting back on my workload. And I,
We can't make you an offer that you
Well,
can't.
wait, well, that's
no,
encouraging.
I think I would be
encouraging.
That's encouraging.
intrigued.
You're not telling us.
And the reason, let me say this, when I pulled this up to look at it, I looked at the amount of time that had gone in and the dates in the proposal, and I thought, that doesn't work for Orange, because realistically, the date that was gonna work out was 18 months out. or longer.
Yeah.
Because the problem we end up with, from a consultant's perspective, is what happens in the summer months and what happens from Thanksgiving to New Year's. It throws a real wrinkle into the overall schedule. So you can work out a schedule so it sort of just slides over those dates, and it's not a big problem. But I looked at it and said, you know what, this plan could be done by September of '25. And so that's a scenario that I think I could be interested. So,
Appreciate that.
There are, I was just thinking, oh, I'm sorry.
no,
We're
the
very
only thing I
nice-
wanted to say was.
We're very nice to work with.
I enjoy working with you, that's why I'm here. So in the back of your mind, you need to think about, what I'm saying to you tonight is both as a person who, I've worked with you before, and I want you to make good choices. There's a possibility that I could submit a proposal. So there are some conversations you may want to have, and I would say to you, look, as a potential submitter, you shouldn't have that conversation with me, but we'd be blunt with Jack. Jack, I don't think I can, a lot of things I can help you with, but I don't want you to be criticized like, you know,
Understood.
don't want that, so.
Criticized for what?
Just any sort of favoritism or anything else?
As
We're
if
not
we've already
related to-
decided who our consultant will be
We're not?
before
We're not
we-
related to the
I'm going back, yeah.
Well, I know, but that doesn't, wouldn't concern me at all. I mean, if we were happy with what. you know,
Right,
No, we're
well, it
gonna have
goes
to-
back
we'll
to
go
your
through the
Well,
process.
question.
maybe from an
Right.
outside perspective.
But you gotta
if-
talk to purchasing too. The issue is, if you guys said, you know, Glenn, we just wanna hire Planometrics to do the plan again, you gotta check with purchasing. Purchasing will say, look, for a dollar amount of that amount, you're gonna need to get multiple quotes.
Right,
So the issue is,
but I think we know the answer to the very important question, would you hire that person again?
I think that's the
We
thing
do?
that you have to ask yourself for other people. I've had occasion, I mean, just two examples, which to me, I don't know, I'm really tickled about them. Years ago, I saw in Planning Magazine an advertisement for the comprehensive plan for Pinehurst, North Carolina. Now, it's the number 3 golf destination in the world. So I say to myself, well, what the hell? I'll always be able to say to people, I submitted a proposal in Pinehurst. Well, then they gave me an interview. And now I'm ticked, because you know what it costs to fly to North Carolina on a whim, right? They're not reimbursing. I'm like, okay, well, I'll always be able to say I got an interview in Pinehurst. So I go down, but one of the competitive firms, the principal got caught in a snowstorm on his flight, so they wanted to reschedule. Would I come down again? And it's like, are you kidding me? But then I got the job.
No kidding, that's
And
great.
so that was, you know, you can find people out there that you never expect to find who are gonna do a great job for you.
Were you able to take any strokes off your handicap?
No.
No.
I wanted to play number 2, but they don't comp number 2,
Yeah.
unfortunately. And then the other one was Oak Bluffs on Martha's Vineyards. Now, that's really a fascinating, it's an island. We were talking about the Pine Barrens and stuff like that. But, you know, it's in January, February.
Desolate.
Tumbleweeds are blowing through.
Yes, so,
And then in the summertime, it's like, are you kidding me? So cast a wide net and keep your eyes open, because something may come along and it's just, wow.
Understood.
That's what I would want for you guys.
So a lot of things in looking at the POCD today, from start to finish, there's some things that we probably, we never got to. You know, like this, the idea of consolidating zoning districts. That seemed like a great idea. It just never got that on the agenda or got that on as a project, you know. I saw a reference too to, you know, a design review board. It was something that we thought we would explore. You know, it's in the plan of conservation and development. And again, nothing that we had looked at, but I guess what I'm saying is, I mean, maybe, you know, the part of the, you know, we're talking about the input from the public, but there should be a lot of input from us. Things that we want to, you know, raise to a higher level and try to get some work done on that, you know. We don't have, I guess we don't have to worry about the transit-oriented development district.
You sure? We can revisit it.
So, yeah, and that's
We
an
have-
example of something that we thought was gonna be favorable for the town, but at the first application, when we, you know, applied it, there was such greed, and it was just flawed.
Yeah.
and it went away.
We got good
But-
experience.
Well, it went away because the train doesn't stop.
That's correct.
Here,
We dissolved the
It would have been a
district,
mess
yeah.
if it did.
right.
Yes.
But on the other hand, there are a lot of larger forces in play than the town of Orange that are impacting us.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
he mentioned, like the environmental, the sustainability stuff.
Yeah, but we're, you know, this is a small town, it's not a city. And, you know, we might have an underlying opinion that I like this town, I like the way it's structured. You know, I only want apartments if there's an affordable component to them, just as a baseline. And we might find out that with the changing people moving in, moving out, they're like, no, we'd like a lot of apartments down on the post road or something like that. And we wouldn't know
Right.
without going through this process. So it's,
No, there's no way to shake the fact that we're looking through it through 40 and 50-year-old eyes.
is that your right eye or your left eye?
And we just, we got to get the people to come back, because the town is getting, it's turning over. It just is.
But part of that is the housing
Yeah.
issue, right?
Yes.
Because-
Huge.
So that is one of the more challenging issues in POCDs these days, is how to address that issue. And one of the things, I had a chance to work with probably maybe 10 or 15 towns on their affordable housing plans. And the problem is that people in the towns have housing. So as far as they're concerned, it's a defensive approach until either their parents or their kids
Need an
need
alternative.
housing, in which case now their philosophies and thoughts. So it's a long-term challenge for communities to get to. It's not gonna turn around quickly, but people have kids need housing, and if you don't.
No, it's
no
worth,
housing
it's
built-
worth planning for, because, where I am right now, absolutely, it's one of the challenges of people, how are they gonna get their kids to remain here? They like it. Totally unaffordable at this point for much of the housing stock.
But there are some things that you're not gonna change that are out of your control.
Right.
If it costs $350 a square foot to build new housing, you're not gonna build affordable housing unless you
Not for a
have-
single family, no, but there
No,
could be other
right,
avenues.
Right, so density becomes,
Yeah.
this answer, but does every town have to address every need and have every product that's available in their small little geographic area?
No, but I think the issue for towns to start thinking about is how they might be able to diversify their housing
Right.
portfolio.
Yes.
So the issue is you don't need the full spectrum of, Co-op City in New York all the way to a rustic cabin in the Adirondacks. That's, no, but the question is for us, and with the economic growth and development that Orange has seen over the years, they need workers.
Yeah.
So,
No.
these are part of the planning process that
Yeah.
is interesting.
Well, that doesn't sound a lot different than what's in our plan of conservation
Right,
development.
exactly.
Yeah.
No. But I'm also looking at the schedule and it's saying, nice that you started now, we should have started about 4 months ago.
I think if you can, there's not an insignificant amount of things to do that may require input from other boards in town or purchasing, et cetera. But I think if you could start to think about what might it take to get somebody on board to get started as of July 1. Now, I think that leaves about a 15-month process through to September of '25, and I think it can happen in that timeframe.
Okay.
But
July's coming faster than you think.
it is, I mean, it's that's part of the
I've
challenge.
talked to some other municipalities that have requested that extension. As long as you prove it's in the works and they are, you're actively working towards, voting in another POCD, they're, typically the state awards that.
Oh, yeah, it's not a problem. The
Correct.
issue ends up being partly is, as a kid, my mom would tell me to clean my room, and I'd be like, yeah, you know, I'll get to it eventually, but, and then the issue is, you know what? You're not going out to play with your friends if your room's not clean.
Right.
Gonna get it done. So having a schedule is, I think, something helpful. So I think you don't wanna rush it, you wanna think it through. If things get controversial along the way, give yourself some breathing space, et cetera.
And what were the months that you said was probably the optimal time to post that RFP?
I would say, if you wanna have somebody on board to start July 1, you have to have
Yesterday.
the agreement signed
April,
in
May?
June, which means you have to do the interviews in May, which means the RFP should probably be out by April.
Okay.
And if you can move that up.
Yeah.
Give yourselves time during the interview selection process, because that choice is gonna be an important one for you.
And the RFP is typically posted a month, you said, so we'll, after 4 weeks, we'll start to have the interviews here and go from there. Okay.
Soon.
Yeah, and talk to other towns that, and if you wanna call me or whatever, I'll give you other towns that I know they're in the process of doing, or towns near you, et cetera. And you can sort of ask them pointed questions about, well, how did they configure the interview process, things like that. They may have interview questions that, or surveys they've done, as Kevin was saying earlier, that might give you a bead on some great questions that you might wanna consider, so just kind of create a folio and.
Yeah, I mean, we do have some good examples of, you know, these requests for proposals. We have ours that we used the last time we redid this. So maybe, you know, the commission, you know, can start either sharing some ideas with me and I can put something together, or, you know, if we're comfortable with, you know, how it's worded, we only need some minor revisions. You know, it's really up to.
You sent them out, was that in our, that was on the?
Yeah, so I have I
He
can,
handed that out.
yeah, I can send out the copy of ours that we did last time digitally tomorrow. I just printed them out hard copy right now, because I just found them today. But we have a lot of examples from other towns that Glenn shared with us. You know,
Yeah.
we could take notes from there, we can kind of, you know, take a look at what we used last time. Do we wanna change a lot? Do we wanna change a little? Do we wanna prioritize one thing over another? You know, all that is, it's up to us. You know, I think, honestly, I was going through it today. I think we kind of erred on the less specific side, you know, which I'm kind of in favor of, because they're gonna come in and give us a presentation anyways. You know, so I, you know, don't wanna force them into a corner, you know, with our request for
Let's
proposal.
all get eyes on that for next meeting
Yeah.
and see if that makes, I mean, it's a starting point anyway.
Yeah, for sure. We can bring in notes, and if we're, you know, fairly comfortable with what's here, or, you know, we say, hey, we wanna change this, we wanna change that, we can. And then I can get it posted.
Yeah, I would think that by the time we get to March 1, we'd have that all set to go.
I
Or
would think
something
so,
set.
yeah. We,
And actually, that might work better, because depending on what happens with appropriating the necessary funds or whatever, if you started in March, due in April, interviews in May, select, and then get the funding together, that might be an extra step in that process.
You should actually start putting it on the schedule for, you know, for our.
On the agenda.
our
Yeah.
agenda, yeah,
Yeah.
under,
Yeah.
under new business, I will keep POCD discussion on there, and we can,
Yeah, so we keep tabs
Absolutely.
on our progress,
yeah,
right?
yep, absolutely.
Okay.
Good.
Thank you very much.
Listen,
Nice- nice
thank you
to
for
see
Thank
coming.
you.
Great to
Glenn,
have you
Glenn,
back.
thank you very much.
So
Very nice of you to come
if we're
tonight.
back here in 10 years having this, you know.
Yeah. Who's gonna have a walker? Who's gonna have a cane?
Exactly. You hear the elevator going in the.
Thank you very much for coming in
Yeah.
and
My
making yourself
pleasure.
available.
So
That was
very much
a huge
appreciated.
help for me.
Really appreciate it, definitely.
Yeah,
My pleasure.
absolutely.
All right. I guess that's it for our agenda, unless there's anything else under new business.
I don't have anything else.
All right, then, we can entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We have a motion to adjourn, a second. Second. It's been seconded. All those in favor?
All right.
Aye. Okay, thank you.